Hello, everyone. Rabbi Rosen here, hoping you are well, hoping that you had a very pleasant Thanksgiving, and looking forward to Hanukkah, which is very soon upon us. We have in this week's Torah portion of Vayishlach what I consider to be one of the most significant scenes in the entire Torah, if not the entire Hebrew Bible. We find Jacob, after 20 years serving his uncle Laban in Padan Aram, returning home. He is about to meet his brother Esau, the brother who had promised to kill Jacob should they ever meet again. And Jacob, of course, is fearful. And we find him in a very important scene at night by the river Yabok, wrestling with an unnamed Ish, a person. And there are many theories as to who this person is, this wrestling partner, if you will, and it's not entirely clear from the text. It might be, as some suggest, an angel of Esau. It might be, as we will discuss tomorrow, his own conscience. Or it might be, as we'll see in just a moment, an angel of God, or perhaps even God in God's self in some measure. In any event, that wrestling match takes place. Jacob prevails until the morning and is injured in the process, and from that point onward, in his sciatic nerve being affected by what has taken place, he goes forward with a limp, presumably for the rest of his life. One other important thing, in the process of this entire encounter, Jacob is given a new name, Yisrael, or Israel. In the understanding that the possibility here might be that Jacob is wrestling with God or an angel of God, we find a very important insight that's put forth by Adin Steinsaltz. Rabbi Steinsaltz suggests that in Jewish tradition, one who wrestles with God, like Jacob, is ultimately blessed by God. It is not a sin to strive against God. In fact, that's what Yisrael ultimately means, to strive with God. Faith is never something that you flip on or off like a light switch. It is something that encourages us to argue, to push back, to rebel even against the divine, just not to ignore the divine. We see that with Abraham at the Sodom and Gomorrah scene. We see that with Tevye in all of the Shalom Aleichem stories. And we see it in one of the most remarkable stories that have come forth from the Holocaust, which depicts a group of rabbis, annoyed, angry, and very despairing of God, holding a trial, finding God ultimately guilty for crimes against the Jewish people and humanity. Can you imagine? And then turning around and saying, gentlemen, it's time for mincha. It's time to pray the afternoon prayer. Only in Judaism, I imagine, could such a course of events be possible. One who strives and struggles with God in the end is blessed by God. That, I think, is the lesson, one of the most important lessons of the entire Torah. For those of us who find faith difficult, who find it a challenge on a day-to-day basis to hold God in the palm of our hands or in our hearts, nonetheless, I think that we might take a certain amount of strength going forward to understanding the possibility of wrestling with the divine and being in that ring and sparring for a few rounds. Ultimately, that is the kind of faith that promoted the work of the Maccabees and of many a Jew over the centuries, and I hope we might be counted amongst them. Shabbat Shalom, wishing everyone a wonderful week and a very bright Hanukkah in just a few days.